Welcome back, or welcome to the 31 Days of Horror. We are now on day 16. So, if this is the first video that you're seeing, I have 15 other videos about horror movies that I've watched one a day for the month of October. We are now on the 16th day, and we have less than half. We have 15 days left in the month. So, we're right about the halfway point, and today I checked out the movie Escape Room. Now, this wasn't necessarily a movie that I had a huge interest in, PG-13 horror and all. But I was seeing it looks like they made a sequel movie, or somebody made a movie that's a spiritual sequel and called it Escape Room with a addendum. So I'm assuming it's a sequel. I've been seeing that come up a lot in the lists of just horror movies that were released this year, and I really didn't want to watch that one, especially not having seen Escape Room, even though I did hear about it. I had heard little bits about it when it was released, like I said, probably mostly on Instagram, advertisements between reels and whatnot. Um, I don't see actually a lot of film advertisements unless they're in social media feeds and they happen to like catch my eye, because I pay handsomely for all of my streaming services to not have commercials because I hate them. Also, I have a child who is on the younger side, so I really try to stay away from advertisements, mostly because they're not quite catered to kids like they used to be. I remember when I was growing up, you never saw anything that was inappropriate until after the news. And then after the news, all bets were off. You got your beer commercials, you got your horror movies, you got your underwear commercials, whatever. It's free for all. But before that, when it was family time for the TV, you never saw commercials that were inappropriate. And that is not the day and age that we live in anymore. So the best way for me to protect my kid from crap I don't want him to see is to pay handsomely so that my streaming services do not have commercials. So I don't see a whole lot. And I like it that way, mostly because I like to hear about films coming out. I don't like to see previews, because my experience is that previews usually ruin pretty much everything in a film. And you don't realize that until you're watching the film. And then you realize, like, oh, we're kind of getting to this point in the movie, and I haven't seen this scene yet, so that was a spoiler. Like, and as you're watching the movie unfold, it's being spoiled for you by what your brain's already seen. And that sucks. So I didn't know anything really about this movie going into it, other than it was called Escape Room, and I assumed it was, as the description says, people sign up to be in an escape room, and they die if they don't solve it. I mean, that was really all I knew. And essentially, that's really what this is. It's uh, a cool take, kind of not particularly original premise, that's sort of trapped in the room, sort of figuring out how to get out. Um, that sort of like closed door claustrophobic horror is a genre that a lot of people like. Um, this is the first outing that I've seen with an actual escape room, and the cool thing is that it's because it's a very popular thing to do. People love going to escape rooms and trying to figure it out, and they do it with family, they do it with friends, they do it on dates. Like, it's a very cool thing to do. Um, and an escape room, to me, is kind of like our modern day, almost like corn maze. And we had horror movies in corn mazes. We have horror movies in cornfields all the time, because it's something that's unknown. It's it can be claustrophobic. You can't see around you. You don't know what's going on around you. Your hearing isn't necessarily functioning because, well, it's functioning, but it's not functioning properly because of how sound travels in those spaces. So you can't always trust what you're hearing. You can't always trust what you're seeing. And it can be very disorienting and confusing. So corn fields and corn mazes, I think, were the previous incarnation of this sort of trope of using something that people gravitate to, especially in spooky season, as a way to scare them. I mean, we've seen haunted house horror. You have, like Hell House LLC, you have that series. There's also quite a few documentaries out right now because of that notorious haunted house where they were apparently just torturing people for fun, and it's a whole thing. Check it out on the internet. Anyway, so that sort of aspect is not different. And this movie is not completely original, but it takes a concept that's not necessarily new and does make it something new with a relatively new concept. For anybody who hasn't done an escape room, you pay a fee, and usually it's themed. And the themes run the gamut. You can do scary themes, you can do detective themes, you can do Harry Potter themes. I mean, you pick it, you can do an escape room of it. And they put you in a room that it sort of looks like a normal room. Usually it's pretty cluttered, decor wise. And when you go in there, you have to look around the room and find different clues that help you unlock the door to leave. And you usually have a time. Like, I don't know, like an hour is usually pretty common. So you have like an hour to figure out how to get out of this room. If you're having trouble, you can usually like ask for a hint, and then whoever's working will give you a hint to help you figure it out. And when the time is up, there was actually a cute line in this movie that explains it. When the time is up, then an employee comes in and condescendingly tells you everything you missed. But it's a fun thing that people do together, and they took that concept. They started that this movie starts off, you're sort of introduced to each one of the characters, not all of them, but each few of the characters, their sort of backgrounds, their lifestyles and things, and then everybody is delivered this present from somebody that they know that we saw them interact with, and it's a puzzle box that upon solving it has an invitation to this very exclusive escape room, and if you survive it, then the grand prize is $10,000. And everybody that is presented to needs the money for something. There's a reason that they need the money, or that and the movie, you know, so then everybody shows up, they're in a waiting room, and you know, they're kind of picking at each other a little bit, being like, you know, like, I don't know if I want to be in here with you guys, that kind of thing. And then they find out that they're already in the escape room. They're not even in a waiting room. And then it progresses through rooms from there, and of course we find out that, you know, it's everything is real, so characters start not making it here and there. The true nature of the characters start coming out, you know, and we see different people interacting in different ways. And then, you know, you get the end wrap up. And this movie was different. It was unique. They did a great job with casting. You'll probably recognize, if you're into horror, Tyler Labine, who was in Tucker and Dale versus Evil. He's very enjoyable as a character actor, and he's enjoyable in this. And there are clever traps, there are clever solutions. The characters aren't stupid, which is nice. And their backstories are significant to the main plot, but they don't spend too much time stuck in it, as far as I'm concerned. So this movie has a lot going for it, but it does have a lot not going for it. All of that setup is fine, except everybody receiving a box that's a puzzle that you have to solve. Literally, that happens at the beginning of Glass Onion, which isn't a horror film, but it's a Knives Out movie that was produced by Netflix. And so this feels, and actually, as I'm saying that, I'm going to look up right now. Let's see. So Escape Room came out in 2019, and Glass Onion came out after that, I believe. Glass Onion came out in 2022. So even though this movie actually did that before Glass Onion is a little bit more of a prominent movie because it got a lot more press, it got a lot more advertising because it was a Netflix film. And so essentially, I don't I don't know if Glass Onion was maybe inspired a little bit. Now, to say that it was a direct ripoff, that's can't really be said because there's been other movies that have done the same thing. The other thing too is that the kind of design of the box reminds me an awful lot of the Lament configuration from Hellraiser, and I think we're all familiar with that puzzle box. And the fact that I'm familiar with the puzzle box from Hellraiser means that if anybody sent me a puzzle box, I would absolutely under no circumstances touch it or solve it. I don't scare easily. I don't have a lot of superstitions. I don't believe in a lot of stuff. But just on the off chance that any of that stuff is real, you will never see me trying to solve one of those puzzles because I am not interested in any of the Cenobites coming to visit me. So that's not, no thank you. Anyway, so that's not entirely, original, but it would be interesting to know if this was a little bit, if this inspired Glass Onion a little bit. And because it's easy to think like, oh, they stole this from Glass Onion, except Glass Onion came out 3 years after this movie was made. So who knows? So anyway, not entirely original, but that's the way it is. And, that gets us into the story. It helps get us into the story pretty quickly. And then once we're in the story, like I said, the different mechanisms, the different traps and things like that, they're all very clever. Except once they're in the escape rooms, I couldn't help but feel a deja vu almost. And that deja vu for me was this movie feels like vibes 100% and reminds me an awful lot of the movie Cube. Now, I know that's not necessarily the most popular of horror movies, and, it's not everybody's favorite, but it came out in 1997, and back in the days of, the 90s when I was a kid, and, early 2000s when I was a young adult, I've mentioned in previous videos that a lot of the ways that I got into horror was watching edited versions on cable, or, on USA, TNT, TBS. I remember TNT used to do Monster Vision on Friday nights with Joe Bob Briggs, and I used to love that because it was edited movies, but he was funny in between, and I used to look forward to that every week. And Cube was one of those movies that used to be on randomly on like a Sunday afternoon. And so it's a movie that I saw quite a lot when I was younger because it seemed like it was always on TV. Like on the sci-fi channel early on, just loved the movie Cube. And so it would just happen to be one of those movies that I've probably seen like 10 times or so without exaggeration because of that fact. So, but it's also a movie that I wouldn't search out. I haven't watched it in years because you know, it's fine. It's not a bad movie at all. I like it. Like I said, I've probably seen it like 10 times. There's really no reason for me to watch it again. This movie had Cube vibes written all over it. You put everybody in a puzzle and they're confused at first. Everybody kind of plays their role. There's certain things that each one is good at based on their backgrounds. There's different reasons why they're all here. Their backstory plays prominently into why they're here. And their main goal is trying to escape. And when they do finally escape, what ends up, coming up is that there's some big company that's responsible for this, and that's why they're able to do this, and that this is also a sort of form of experimentation in some way, shape, or form. That being said, Escape Room is definitely horror, and Cube leans a little bit more into the sci-fi horror aspects of it. But like I said, very, very, very similar vibes. And so like I can't say that this ripped off Glass Onion because Glass Onion came out 3 years later, but I can say for certain that there's a lot of elements of this that I feel like they kind of borrowed without asking from the movie Cube. I also think that the ending tried too hard. there's a sort of gray area with endings. Endings are the big thing for me personally, and I think an ending can completely ruin or make a movie. And I think the end of this movie sincerely tried too hard to answer our questions and also tried too hard to set up a sequel at the same time as answering our questions. And by doing that, they kind of ruined it. Like, they could have just ended it on a certain note and it would have been fine. And then they kind of introduced this, like, other ending. Not like it was like the movie ended and you were like, okay, cool. Oh, but wait, no, wait, it's not over. And then there's another ending. And you're like, okay, cool. I get it. Okay, set up the sequel. Oh, wait, no, we're not done yet. Okay. I mean, that wasn't bad. I guess, okay, but like, is it actually okay? Okay, it's over. It's over now. I hate that. Just find an ending and end your movie. Don't trick me with an ending or be like, oh, but wait, there's more. I don't want that. I want to watch a complete movie, and I don't want you to trick me with, oh, but wait, we have more story to tell you. That's not, why do you need to trick me with that? Just tell me the story. You don't need to trick me and tell me more. Just be like, oh, hey, this is how we're going to wrap up the movie. Don't false end it twice. That's when you get into some, like, Return of the King, Lord of the Rings area, and I don't have criticisms of those movies really at all, except the fact that Return of the King technically ended 2 times before it actually ended, and it ends the first time, I think, about 45 minutes before the actual movie ends. It's really my only criticism of the series whatsoever. Anyway, so it has a bit of that vibe. And also, as it introduces these last little bits, the beginning bits of the movie where they were all invited then start to feel a lot like Squid Game. And so now we have, okay, this movie feels an awful lot like Glass Onion, this movie feels an awful lot like Squid Game, this movie feels an awful lot like Cube, and it kind of goes back to what happened with yesterday's movie, is Cobweb was in no way, shape, or form original, and that ruined it. On the other hand, I have to say, Escape Room was a lot more original. Escape Room didn't make us celebrate or punish characters necessarily based on their backstory. It gave us other characters preconceived notions of the characters, but it didn't give us preconceived notions of the characters. Just that the characters themselves were dealing with preconceived notions from others. So that was a bit different. And the escape room concept, I think, is a really cool area to explore. Just like I was talking about with the movie Tarot, there's a lot of these elements in movies and in real life that can lend itself very well to horror. And seeing them now being explored, seeing them now on the screen is neat, because the only way that we're going to get really good horror involving these things is by people trying. So I do not think that Escape Room was a victim of lazy writing. I think they tried to answer too many questions. And in trying to answer too many questions, they gave us information we didn't need. And it kind of padded the runtime, and it kind of lessened the movie overall, because it changed the vibe of things. And in a way I don't think that they were necessarily going for. And so, like I said, PG-13 horror is something that can be a bit negative for me. And I am very vocal about it. But I do think there's a place for it. And I think that this is a good I think this is a good entry. I definitely do. I'm just looking up a couple of things about it right now. Um, critic response, it's at 51% on Rotten Tomatoes, um, with approval rating, which you know what? There's a quote here. Looks like maybe it's from, let's see, the website's critical consensus reads, Escape Room fails to unlock much of the potential in its premise, but what's left is still tense and thrilling enough to offer a passing diversion for suspense fans. And I think that's insanely accurate. That's a really great way to put it. And I have to say that I'm a fan. I actually do think that I will probably check out the sequel. Just for curiosity's sake, I don't think I'm pretty sure I'm not going to check it out as part of this series of, you know, for this month, because I don't love to do sequels. Usually because sequels fail, like they pale in comparison, most of the time. And I think we can kind of all agree on that. But like I said, for a PG-13 outing, I think this had a lot going for it. Does it live up to its potential? No. But does it fail miserably? Also no. And like I said, it intrigued me enough that I'll probably check out the sequel. And I'm going to tuck this, you know, in the old noggin for when my kiddo's a bit older, because like I said, I think this would be great. A great entry, just like I was talking about The Craft Legacy the other day for PG-13 horror. I think this would be also a really great movie for those, you know, younger, you know, kind of teenagers, you know, who are just getting into the scares, or who, you know, maybe want to have a sleepover and they want to watch a scary movie or something. I think this would be great for those kinds of things if you're like me as a parent and you're keeping an eye on, you know, what your kids are consuming. So, you know, that being said, maybe give Escape Room a look and let me know what you think down below, and I'll see you in the next one.